Goalkeepers, thanks for joining us. This is a KeeperStop.com live Facebook event with good friend Aron Hyde. Aron Hyde is the U.S. men's national team goalkeeper coach. Let me give you a little bit of background on Aron. Aron has been a long time goalkeeper coach in the MLS, Chicago Fire, most recently with Atlanta United, training many top goalkeepers. I know Aron has been a trusted member of many national team staffs, war rooms, including Jurgen Klinsmann in the last World Cup. So it's an honor to have him here, and it's a great resource for the men's national team to have Aron, who's been a part of the game on many different levels, as part of the national staff. So Aron, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a part of the goalkeeper community.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Christian. Good to see you.
Yes, and that's the second time. So he's less enthusiastic. He's like, yeah, Christian, not very excited anymore. No, Aron, amazing. Thank you very much. Hard times for everybody, so I appreciate you taking time out to talk goalkeeping. Most importantly, we all should be thinking about it, right? Because we can't be playing it, so we might as well be thinking about it. What are you doing right now to keep yourself busy and active and part of the goalkeeping community right now?
Well, with the national team particularly, we're looking at a lot of different things that potentially you wouldn't necessarily dive into and look at the details too much. So Greg's done a good job of keeping us sort of busy in terms of key parts of the game that are important that we could look at and ask if there's things that we want to add to our game model for when we eventually get back playing again.
So are you watching, trends, or are you watching potential competitors? Or, what are you doing from a game perspective?
So looking at it all, really. So what's happening around the world? I think it's always important to go back to the game and look at what's happening. Where's the game going? I think that's always something you should be looking at as a coach. And then we're obviously looking at ourselves, and it's been a good for me. Obviously, I joined, I went in November, did the Nations League games against Canada and Cuba, but fully getting up to speed with where things are going and the change with what Greg has brought has been this has been a good opportunity to really get into some more of the details and understand how he's going to work and what he wants and potentially where we're going to go once we get going again.
Did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams as an English boy playing as a college standout, did you ever imagine yourself being the head of U.S. men's national team goalkeeping?
No, not at all. Of course not. I think it's such a far away thing, and I think when I think about coaching at the international level, it's usually people that have been involved in a game for many years, and it's almost a reward for success you've proven when you've coached day in day out at the domestic level. So this is the second opportunity that I've had working at the international level. So when the opportunity came up and the experience I got from November working with Greg and the rest of the staff that he's got in place, it was a no-brainer, really.
You've been playing a long time. One of the questions we just got on Facebook was, when did you start playing as a goalkeeper?
I started the very first time I played football. I played as a centre back and hated it, and went in goal and never looked back from there. Yeah, I think it was the fact you had to run.
We had one of those too here as well. Paul was a centre back and then transitioned his fast feet into goalkeeping, and then found himself at Central Connecticut State University. So I've heard that story many times. So I wanted to ask you is because you've come so far, all of us aspire to be at the highest levels of coaching, whether it be pro or representing your country as a coach. Who are your goalkeeping mentors? And I'm not talking playing mentors, but coaching mentors as you were growing up. Who helped influence you and shape you and continues to do so to this very day?
I think the one person that comes to mind when I think about this, and I remember vivid memories of it, was as a kid growing up playing for Kidderminster Harriers, who back then were either sort of they were non-league or they were in the bottom tier of the football league. was a guy called Phil Barber, who some people may have heard of. Had a good career playing in England, and he was a goalkeeper at the time at Kidderminster Harriers, but he'd broken his thumb or broken a finger, and he would always come out and do the academy training with the goalkeepers. And it was a real eye-opener in terms of the intensity that you have to actually work at if you want to be successful and if you want to make it. And I always remember going in dreading the training sessions because of the demands he placed on us, but also at the same time how much I improved because of how much he pushed us and challenged us. So he definitely is one guy as a kid growing up that he sticks out to me.
That's great. I mean, all of us have those, references and mentors and such. So it's important. I mean, it's what drives us. I think there's a common thread in all of our questions that everybody's having on social media right now is there's no substitute for hard work, and this coach that you're speaking of inspired you to be better, to work harder, and showed you how much work that needs to be done. So that's exceptional. I appreciate that. Part of that other question is coaching mentors, and currently, right, I'll use myself as an example right now. So growing up, watching Dan Gaspard train as a master motivator was influential to me, probably why I'm still involved in goalkeeping. Watching the level of detail that Phil Wedden puts into sessions, as well as how Eric Steele inspires everybody to love goalkeeping and want to be more involved. Anybody that you're watching right now or taking inspirational cues from?
Well, I think you just mentioned the guru himself, Eric Steele, and I was very fortunate when I was in Chicago to actually play against Manchester United in an international friendly, and I met Eric, and having actually spent time with Eric and seeing how he worked at the elite level and seeing how he worked with David De Gea when he first came to Manchester United, and getting to see that firsthand and sit there and have conversations with him about how he works and where is the game and what's the needs and demands of the goalkeeper. He's been definitely one, and then another guy that at the elite level would be who's become a good friend of mine as well is Andy Quay. He was at Stoke City for 10 years, and he's worked with Asmir Begovic. He brought him through from being a young goalkeeper and establishing himself, and obviously moved on to play for Chelsea, and then also worked with an England international and Jack Butland. So those two guys at the elite level, I think having those opportunities to see and speak and talk to them has been definitely very helpful to me in my career. And then I think as the interesting thing now is that obviously with Tim Dittmer does a lot of good stuff, and obviously he was he does a lot of these, and then even today, Anthony, the lad from Bournemouth, does a really up and coming, progressive, and the one thing that I like about them is that the importance of the game doesn't stand still, and it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving, and I think the way they think is different, and it can be a little bit uncomfortable for people. But again, I always go back to this, and I think these guys, particularly right now, are sort of at the top of this, is where's the game going? And those guys see that what demands have been placed on the goalkeeper particularly is probably more than any other position, with playing out of the back, the involvement of that, the requirements, what are needed for a goalkeeper, not only to keep the ball out of the back of the net but use their feet to participate in the build-up. So I think those two are particularly good examples of guys that are very progressive and thinking differently to try and evolve and push goalkeepers further.
So there's a very serious question on Facebook coming from this gentleman named Tobias Kennedy. He said he noticed you have a quarantine goatee. Is this here to stay or what? TBD. It depends what my wife allows me to. Yes, I have the quarantine and 45-year-old goatee, so So thank you, Toby, for the question. Keep them coming. Got a great question here. We're gonna get into. I got a lots of questions. Here's the other questions. I don't know how much time we have, but a question that I want to get to because it's a very good one that gets people going right away is how different is coaching the national level versus coaching in the MLS?
Yeah, it's completely different, and it's something that I'm learning about really. In the last November and then this last January camp, how you're going to work and how you're going to go about your work is very, very different, and it's something that now I'm using this time to really look back and reflect on about how I'm going to be productive and effective working in those short windows. Not necessarily so much emphasis based on improving and having a development plan and structure, and more a question of trying to get up to speed from a tactical standpoint, because just the lack of contact time. It's important to make sure that you understand what's going to happen in the matches. So you're looking at your threats of the opposition and making sure that from the tactical standpoint that you deliver in such a short period of time what you feel is most important for the goalkeepers.
All right. So we got some real questions here. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. All right. So now a bar to the national staff. I mean, you have the ability to work some great goalkeepers, and I know you have in the past. I mean, I know you worked with Brad at Atlanta and had some experience with Tim and Brad on the national level as well. But now as the full national team coach, you have, what I looked at the roster recently, you have Bill Hamid, you have Matt Turner, Sean Johnson. Could you tell me about the qualities that they possess that help them be a part of that U.S. men's national team status? What makes them as good as they are?
Well, I think the first thing to go to, obviously within any national team, is you're picking players based on how they perform. So we're constantly monitoring and analysing their performances from a week-to-week basis, and Matt Turner as a prime example of that is that he was rewarded by getting called into camp last November because of the performances that he put in the back half of the season. And it would be the same for Sean. Sean has always been in and around the national team setup for several years, and I would say more so than ever now in the past 3-4 years since he got to New York. He's matured, and he demonstrates a level of consistency which you want from your goalkeeper, and then with that as well is that the team he plays at fits the game model that Greg wants to try and implement. So you're looking at a player and his profile, and is he doing it week in, week out for his club? And obviously, because the concepts and the tactical requirements are easier to grasp. And then obviously Bill's the same. Bill's been around the national team set up off and on for several years, and I think his opportunity again comes down to his performances through last season, giving him an opportunity to come into the national team set up in a setting like the January camp, which is pretty unique because there's not many national teams like ours get that opportunity to have a designated camp to get in and work with players on more than just a normal international window. So again, Bill's performances last season put him in the window and gave him the opportunity to come in and see if he fits into obviously the tactical side of it, but also then as an individual within the group and what we're trying to do.
That's some great points there. I guess as a question, and you kind of answered it, but are you picking a player based more on performance, or are you really picking them based on how they fit into your system?
Well, I think they go hand in hand, right? I think it's, does the player possess the qualities potentially to play in a particular system? And then also, obviously, are they performing them at a high level on a regular basis? Again, it's very difficult in international football because the intensity and the quality ratchets is up again another notch from the domestic level. So it's very difficult to expect someone who's not doing it at all, and it's not even a consideration to step in and play in an international game, whether it's a friendly or whether it's a World Cup qualifier or it's the World Cup itself, and expect them just to produce.
It brings up some interesting conversation points, right? And I'm not asking you to answer this because it's controversial, but it's, the conversation that people are having around the world, Ter Stegen versus Neuer, Pope or anybody versus Pickford. If coaches are making decisions, their respective national team goalkeeper coaches are making decisions based on performance, you have some arguments on either side. So it's definitely interesting to hear your perspective. So we got a question out here, and I know the answer to this, but I think it's important for people to understand your role. Your role within the U.S. men's national team organization and pyramid. What are your responsibilities, and do you have anything to do with the youth level?
Yeah, so I'm the goalkeeper coach for the men's national team. So that means, that's my primary focus and that's primary responsibility. I have in the past, I've worked at the youth national team levels, and obviously I'm starting to get a grip of who's coming through and where they're at and where they lie in different age groups. But obviously my focus is with the men's national team, and ultimately we have an objective, which is pretty big objective, which is qualify for next World Cup, because obviously we didn't qualify for the last one. So, obviously a lot of the energy and a lot of time is going in towards that. So, for the most part, no, I don't have any role in the youth national teams, just because it's obviously when they're in camp, we're in camp. So, it's something that obviously you keep an eye on, because it's always you always want to know about who's coming through and how they're doing and where they're at. So, but that's probably about the extent of it. Do
you get an opportunity to share your philosophy with them, or you think that would be something in the future, or no?
Potentially in the future. Obviously, we're 2 months into the job, and obviously we're in a global pandemic. So, obviously things are slowed up, and again, just the priorities are, and it's important that we do qualify for the next World Cup. So that ultimately is going to be where the focus lies.
I got my resume ready in case they're hiring at the youth national level. I'm ready. I can still strike a ball with both legs at 45. So I'm ready. So you've worked some great goalkeepers. I mentioned Brad Guzan before. I'm surprised there's not a comment from Brad the last Instagram live that we did. He had some comments as well, but maybe there will be one. Who knows? But you've had the chance to work with Brad before, and he's been a staple at the international level, domestically and the national team. Because of your experience with him, I think this is an appropriate question. What's made him so effective for Atlanta and for the national team?
Well, I think obviously first and foremost is his ability as a goalkeeper. You don't go and play 9 years in the Premier League if you don't have the ability. So first and foremost, it's that. My experiences working with him, aside from the playing stuff, is just what a tremendous person he is and what a tremendous character he is. And these are things that people on the outside don't see about who he is and what he does, and the energy and the leadership that he brings on and off the field to any organisation. And that's something, the moment he moved to Atlanta and he stepped into the building, he definitely helped off the field, and then obviously his qualities on the field have shown in terms of the success we had as a club in those first 3 years.
I think it's important to recognize many top-level goalkeepers is, the humility they have as well. They're good people first and foremost. They're leaders on the field, and they're ready to help you on the field as well as off the field. And that goes underappreciated and undernoticed for a lot of high-end goalkeepers. So I think that's important to recognize. Tim Howard is regarded as one of the best American goalkeepers. In your estimation, what has made him so good?
Just the probably the most impressive thing about Tim is that when I had my opportunities to work with him, is just his presence and his demeanour. I think you don't play 400 games for Everton. if in the Premier League, if you don't have that. And I think the one thing that, again, a guy doesn't get credit for is joins Manchester United, biggest club in the world, and then, has setbacks, but still comes through them, and still has an amazing career. And I think that's a testament to him and his character and his drive and his determination to make sure that he continued moving forward, and was obviously didn't look at anything as a setback, but just an opportunity to continue moving forward and improve as a player.
Yeah, there's 1,000 things you can read about him out there, and part of it is his faith, and I think that the faith that he has, obviously in a higher power, what I think that more represents for me is just, there's things in life that are more important than just him. Like, I think that just shows us, as coaches and as teammates, that he appreciates everything that goes into goalkeeping. It appreciates everything on and off the field. So again, going back to being just a dynamic individual is exceptionally important. Because I'm sure you've seen it over the years. You run across a lot of youth goalkeepers, and they're just big and macho, and it's male and female goalkeepers alike. It's like, I'm the best, and what I do doesn't stink. And it's important to show that you're confident, but accept your vulnerabilities and your errors, and that's a part of just being a good human. So it's important. You got a bunch of people that are asking questions. Is there any Everton fans out there? Because there's been an Everton comment already. I got one comment right now, one like on the Everton. There's got to be more. Aston Villa, anybody out there? Oh, that one went silent. Well, who is your team growing up?
Yeah, I'm an Aston Villa fan. I grew up in Birmingham, so
come on, we need more likes, Dad. Let's go.
Even before I worked, I was fortunate enough to work with Brad. I was unfortunate enough to have to watch him.
Oh, goodness gracious! I love it. It's amazing. What is your coaching style with the professional goalkeepers that you invite to the national camp? More specifically, are you all just reinforcing good technique? Is it about building trust? What is your coaching style with them?
I think the biggest thing for me is, this was Anthony White talks about this morning. It's when he was online talking. It's interesting because I use the same sort of mantra. Is that I think it's when you go in at the professional level, it's really important that it's not about you as a coach. So establishing what is needed, but also what they want is, for me, so important, because that's how you build a relationship. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a very difficult time. Elite goalkeepers, they're looking for trust. They're looking for someone that they can rely on, that's going to give them what they need to go out and be successful and execute in games. I've worked a lot over the years with that sort of mindset of trying to create that environment that enables discussion. Sometimes things get uncomfortable, so it's important for me as the coach to be okay with that, and it's important for the player to be okay with that, because the environment is that there's an opportunity to look at things and then work back through them, and to come to some sort of understanding and agreement that works for the goalkeeper.
I remember back early when you started with Chicago Fire. There's a lot of us goalkeeper coaches that come out of college, and we may be 22 years old, and you get hired as the goalkeeper coach when you come out, and you may be working with your peers or somebody that's relatively the same age. It was interesting to me, and if you want to share any insight of how you worked with John Bush at the time at Chicago, when essentially I believe he was a little bit older than you were. John was great from that standpoint. He was engaged. I think he liked a different voice and different ideas and a different approach. And he was very receptive to what I had to say. But then, it was important that I'm receptive to him and what he sees and what he thinks, because obviously different goalkeeper, different thought process, has obviously had success for a reason. You don't play that number of years and that many games like he has if there's
if you don't find a way that works for you. So again, it's the same thing. It's not a question of going in shooting from the hip. This is my way. I'm the coach. I'm in charge. I think those days are done, because whenever there's going to be any moment of difficulty, then you're gonna struggle to have any sort of relationship to come to solutions.
Yeah, that partnership's important. Sort of related, but when you have had time with the U.S. men's national team goalkeepers, I only know it's only been a couple months this last time period. When you have time with them at those camps, are you working on handling and distribution? Do you get into dynamic shot and save situations? Are you working on preparing for the match? What is the balance?
I think obviously you're looking, now you're talking about your planning of your week and your match preparation, and depending on where the goalkeepers have played last, you're looking at obviously the amount of travel they've had to do, and now you're assessing where they're at from a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint. Sometimes players are playing on a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, so you've got guys coming in at different days. So obviously it's important to plan accordingly. So the biggest thing I would say, though, again, is, as we already talked about, is definitely the tactical side of it, in terms of I don't necessarily need to worry too much again about technique, because I'm not in that environment and in that moment to worry too much about their techniques. That's up to them in terms of what they do and what their agreements are with their domestic-based coaches, and how they work and how they do those things. It's more a question of making sure that they're aware of what the opposition's threats possess, and then they're getting some repetition of those scenarios, match-like, game-like scenarios in preparation for the game. Great.
We have some questions coming in, and one of these, I think it's an important question. You can answer as much or as little as you like about it. It comes from Andres Papakostas. If you have a goalkeeper, knowing, again, we went over this before, U.S. men's national team goalkeeper coach Aron Hyde, he's not involved in the youth system, but it's been shared a couple times, is if a goalkeeper doesn't play at the DA level, do you feel they still have a chance of being evaluated for any USL or MLS opportunity? That's been a couple questions that have been asked by a few different.
Say that again. So do they get considered for? Will they get considered for the youth national teams?
Yeah. So
because even though they're not playing in the DA or an MLS academy, yeah, I think the scouts out there. I think there's scouts in MLS teams that are scouting those leagues and are looking to bring players in. I think there's been a lot of talk about the zones or the borders for recruitment, removing them, because if a youth player that fits the profile, who lives in Texas, fits the profile of the Seattle Sounders, then why, if Seattle have the infrastructure to do it, why wouldn't they bring the kid in and look to develop them? So I would say that there's a lot of scouts out there. There's a lot of people watching youth games, and it definitely is a possibility.
Great, I appreciate that. Again, there was a question that came around a couple times. As a former goalkeeper coach, I think it's always interesting to speak to goalkeeper coaches about how they help their goalkeepers overcome mistakes. It could be a mistake that you've had to encounter. You don't have to explain the mistake, but just how did you help a goalkeeper overcome mistakes, whether it be MLS or national team? What is your philosophy with mistakes and how to overcome them?
Yeah, this is always a difficult one. Just again, I think the first and the most important thing is that you have a strong relationship with your goalkeeper. I think analysis of games, looking back at them and looking back at training sessions is important, and it's setting the stage about. Maybe not necessarily for me. I don't necessarily look at it as mistakes. The reality is that within the goalkeeping position, the ball's gone through 10 other people before it's got to you. And obviously as the goalkeeper, you have to accept that you're the one that picks the ball out the back of the net, and that with that becomes that responsibility. So I don't necessarily look at things as mistakes. And I think if you have a good enough relationship again with the goalkeepers, they will know this already and be able to own up to it. I think the key thing is always looking at it from more of a positive aspect of as an opportunity to improve on something, and whatever the aspect of the game is, rather than saying this is a mistake and we got to go out and we got to spend the first 2 days of training to work on it to rectify it.
Very good. I'm just putting a note out here. You have a couple of questions coming in from actually a friend of yours, Chris Sharp. He says, very different preparation for club football between national camps. So basically, how is your time spent between planning, scouting, and traveling? Understanding we are in a global pandemic, but how is your breakdown typically, planning, scouting, traveling?
Yeah, I think what it would have looked like is, obviously we had the January camp, which is usually a month long, and then the next plan would have been to watch the games as the MLS season came through. Obviously, Zach Steffen's out in Germany, but has been injured and not played since January, so there's not much to watch there. But watch the MLS games, watch the goalkeepers that we have in the pool, and analyze those games and analyze those performances, and then obviously get out to watch those games live, because I don't think, for me personally, you can't replicate being there in person and watching a game live from either a wide angle that you might get or the broadcast views, especially for the goalkeeper position. Yeah, and then the other part would be is just the club visits. I think it's important to stay engaged and get out and go and see goalkeepers working in their own environments and see what they're doing day in, day out. And, I think something that I've tried to do in the short period since the January camp is to reach out to those goalkeepers with their goalkeeper coaches and offer, opportunity to give feedback from their goalkeepers' performances in the January camp, and try and build relationships that way, so that you're constantly talking about how they're performing and how they're doing, and maybe other things that are going on in their lives and that you need to be aware of.
That's very good information. You've been around, multiple clubs and the U.S. men's national team on varying occasions and camps. I think an important question to be answered for many goalkeeper coaches is, how much coaching do you actually do during the game?
Well, I would say my time in Atlanta, I think I did a lot. I think the way we played, especially with Tata Martino, it relied heavily on the goalkeeper. So the information of what the opponent is presenting to us, and obviously it's a fortunate situation that I was in terms of, we often went into majority of games as the better team, or being sort of on the front foot for most of the game. So what that means, for the opponent in terms of how they might try and stop us. So I think it was more than I've ever done before. And I think, again, to lean on Brad, and was very fortunate to let this be more successful, I would say, was that my ability to then relay information through him that I felt was important, whether it was directly to him or to what was going on in front of him, whether that was just quick messages during the run of play, or whether it was at half time trying to look at key tactical things that maybe needed to get the message across, and use him to do it.
I think it's important to understand that the messaging that you were providing was all positive. It was vital information. It wasn't coaching a goalkeeper, and you can't at that level, but coaching a goalkeeper through the game. I think there's a lot of coaches out there that go in and they feel they have to, control every aspect of the goalkeeper, from...
Yeah, I would say particularly, it's more about the detail. It's about, what are you saying? And that's the most important part, I think, is what I'm saying is that as when we played in Atlanta for the last 3 years, the way we played the game model, it involved the goalkeeper so much in terms of the build-up in possession. But then out of possession, we played so attacking and so aggressive that, it was so important that we had made sure that the team had good structure behind the ball to stop counterattacks. So there's always important details about those particular elements, and it's important to make sure that those messages are getting across.
Yeah, I think that's very important to understand, is how valuable that information is. Specialization is a big topic at the moment in youth sports. I did one with Dr. Bill Steffen recently. I know the U.S. youth national team, U20s have Brady Scott, for example. He played basketball and tennis growing up. I mean, do you think it is important to play multiple sports as a former goalkeeper and as somebody that's evaluating goalkeepers at the national level? Is it important?
I don't think it's important, but does it help? I think absolutely it does. Anything where hand-eye coordination is challenged is going to be beneficial to eventually when you specialize and if you do go that route, playing soccer. So yeah, I think it can only be positive for any individual. There's multiple crossovers from different sports into goalkeeping. So yeah, I think it can only benefit an individual.
What other sports did you do growing up in England?
Oh, I played tennis, badminton, cricket, rugby. So the whole plethora.
Rugby? Are you tough enough to play rugby? Come on.
Well, I play fly off, so I didn't get tackled. I just went and got the ball from everyone that's got tackled.
So is that like a back where you run a lot? Is that what it is, or not?
Yeah, you initiate the ball out of the ruck or the scrum, basically, for the majority of the time. Or if you're close enough to the try line, you would just take it and score yourself.
When I was in college, I had a couple of buddies that also played rugby as well. And while I played at Bryant, you're not supposed to do multiple sports. And I remember getting hit so hard as a back that I had to pick up my lunch money and my jock and collect myself off the field. So I have rugby players lots of respect now that I've been hit harder than I've ever been hit on a cross in my entire life. So well done by you, though. So any suggestions that you have for developing coaches, on how to obtain their coaching goals?
Well, I think the first thing is to do your coaching badges. I think that's the most important thing, and that's not just goalkeeper specific. That's doing your field player. I've done my UEFA A outfield license, and I did that years ago. That was way before I've done any goalkeeper licensing. So, to understand and know the game, to make sure that you are giving your goalkeepers the ability to step into a team setting, when the integration happens, I think you have to have a good understanding from that standpoint. So first, that would be the first and foremost, and then I think the other thing is to ask questions to people. I think you can never take away those, the value of asking questions, because maybe not maybe something that is said is something as an opportunity for you to take away and interpret in your own way that will work for you and your style and how you want to be perceived as a coach. That's the other thing. And then I think the other part then is to analyse. I think there's plenty of good different types of goalkeeper out there. There's plenty of different styles. If you want to understand how to play out of the back, then there's different styles of goalkeepers that do it. Whether it's Alisson, whether it's Ter Stegen, whether it's Manuel Neuer. There's three goalkeepers, all from different nationalities. One, obviously, two are German, but three playing in three different countries that all play out of the back, but don't play in the same way. So understanding that way, so analysing games from that standpoint and what's happening at the elite level is probably the third thing I would say for anyone that wants to improve or challenge themselves. And then obviously the last thing is to get out of the field and do it. You got to coach. You got to get out there. You got to put yourself out there. And even as a coach, you got to be vulnerable that you're gonna have these amazing session plans and you're gonna walk away and go, "Wow, that was a disaster." But you're only going to learn by doing and then taking away from those experiences and improving for the next time.
That's very, very important. Very good points. speaking to a lot of professional goalkeeper coaches through Keeper Stop and at different events, we have to go beyond just being that goalkeeper coach, right? We're not just specialized in goalkeeper training and the techniques of goalkeeping. It's, as you said before, is how can you, make them an integral part of the team, building out of the back, in defending, what have you. It's important to be, a free kick expert as well. There's a lot of things that a goalkeeper coach can do to make themselves very valuable, not just from the goalkeeper perspective, but from the team perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, obviously my responsibilities with Atlanta last year was I was in charge of defensive restarts. And now with the national team is the same. We do offensive and defensive restarts. So, it's important to be able to be a part of the coaching staff from that standpoint.
Very good. Last big question, as we've been going for a while, we appreciate your time and your enthusiasm and your insights. I mean, this is very valuable. As a young goalkeeper and now somebody who is at the top at the national level, what advice do you have for aspiring youth goalkeepers?
I think the first and foremost is to have fun and enjoy playing in goal. I think is to take enjoyment from being a goalkeeper, and then from there is to be prepared to be brave and be vulnerable in terms of a learning process of how you're going to improve. Again, the game's always changing. It's not the easiest position to play in, and I think that we lose sight of that at times. So it's important that young goalkeepers, particularly, and coaches particularly, make sure that they take goalkeepers on that journey in terms of a pathway that enables them to understand that and make sure that they again come back to they enjoy playing in goal. I think for me is probably the most important.
Yeah, the enjoyment part is so important, right? That's what inspires players to, be a part of the game, be a goalkeeper for longer, play when they're in their 40s. So we appreciate your time. Obviously, we know that you have bigger fish to fry, and we appreciate your time with Keeper Stop. We appreciate your insights and advice. If you have any questions on what we discussed today with Coach Aron Hyde from the U.S. Men's National Team goalkeeper staff, make sure that you keep in touch with us, and as Aron suggested, make sure you stay a part of the game when everything is done and dusted with COVID-19. Watch games, get to a U.S. Men's National Team game and make sure you send Aron Hyde some glove love from the side as he's striking balls and warming up goalkeepers. Aron, thank you very much for your time. Anything that you want to share before we leave?
No, just hopefully everyone stays healthy out there and we can all put this behind us and get back to all doing what we all love.
Cross our fingers and wash our hands. This will all be over soon. Aron, thank you very much. You be safe as well.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya.